Okay, example transact. Like regarding the transactions, we'll discuss now.
Okay.
So basically, transactions are done only when the policy is issued or committed. Okay,
Yeah.
unless you can, if you don't commit the policy, then you cannot do any kind of transaction.
Hmm.
Types of transactions. First one is like endorse. So what this endorse will do, like the endorse transaction updates the policy with any premium bearing or non-premium bearing modification. The transaction type should be used for any changes required, updated forms or documents. Premium will be recalculated based on the standard pro rata requirement. The transaction is an editable transaction. Nothing but this endorsement transaction, the user can edit this transaction. Okay. You can do any kind of updates like a premium or non-premium or any kind of changes you can do, like a username or uh, customer name or details or address or premium related changes or forms related changes or any changes you can do, no matter what.
Okay.
Okay. Based on the changes you have done, again the premium will be calculated.
Right.
Every field will be updated even in the forms as well.
Okay. Yes.
When is this transaction applicable? Each transaction type is associated with the rules that determines the user context and policy status for what the transaction is applicable. Out of the box, this transaction type is applicable for the following context and policy status. Agent, when the policy status is in force. Okay, the policy should be in force and then itself the transaction will be applicable. Next, assistant, when the policy status is booked, bond, cancel pending, in force or on non-renewed. Okay, if any of the policy status is like booked, bond, cancel pending, in force or non-renewed, it will be applicable. Okay.
Okay.
Manager, when the policy status is booked, bond, cancel pending, expired, in force, and non-renewed. Okay, if any of the policy status is like related to booked, bond, or cancel pending, expired, even this transaction is applicable. Underwriter. Suppose you logged in as an underwriter in the policy, then if the status is booked, bond, cancel pending, in force or non-renewed, then only this transaction is applicable. Customer user. Suppose if you log in as a customer user, then if the policy status is in force, then only this transaction is applicable.
Yeah.
These are nothing but agent, assistant, manager, underwriter, consumer. These are login user.
Yeah.
Agent user, assistant user, manager user, underwriter user, customer user. Effective date. The endorsement transaction does not default to any data. It follows all general effective data rules and has no transaction specific date rule. Okay. The user can edit this effective date as well.
Okay.
Scheduled date rule. The endorsement transaction follows all general scheduled date rule. It has no transaction specific scheduled date rule. Okay. It has, I mean, like user can give any of the data what are he needs. Expiration date rule. The following rules are applicable to endorse expiration date. Must be greater than the endorsed effective date and must be less than the policy term end date.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing but what are the effective date you have given, it should be greater than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And must be less than the policy term and date. Nothing but suppose if it is a 1 year or 1 month, that kind of a policy term is there, then based on that, it should be less, expiration should be less than that itself.
Right.
Reason code rules. The following reason codes are valid for the endorsement transactions, like rules for completing the endorsed transaction. The endorsed transaction follow all general rules for completing transactions. It has no transaction specific rules.
Right.
Okay. Rules for out of sequence processing. The endorsement transaction can be processed out of sequence. The transaction type follows all general rules for the out of sequence processing. In addition, when an out of sequence endorsed transaction must cross a term, the system applies the endorsed transaction to the first term and then applies for that endorsement to a new out of sequence transaction with an effective date equal to the effective date of the new term. That is applied to the new term. Any subsequent historical records on the second term will include the transaction changes. Nothing but out of sequence is nothing but suppose you have done the endorsement with the current date, like today's date, or 5 June, 5th June 2024. And expiration date is 5 June 2025. Suppose out of the box, out of the sequence is nothing but if you have given effective date or the 6th June 2025,
Yeah.
then it is an out of sequence.
Okay.
That means the range should be between the effective date and expiration date. But if you give out of the box, then it is called an out of sequence. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Bhumika, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The final audit transaction audits the policy. The transaction type causes the system to reread each prior transaction with the proposed audit changes. Returning a charge resulting to the proposed changes is committed out of sequence. This transaction type does not reconcile changes to any subsequent transaction. The final audit transaction is an editable transaction. Okay, this is an editable transaction. It's nothing but it rewrites each prior transaction. It's nothing but what are the transactions you have done before final audit, right? If you just take back to this normal previous state. A given policy can be configured to apply the final audit either with or without segment-based rating. The segment is any point in a policy that causes the rate change. Nothing but what are the premium-based rate changes you have done before the final audit transaction, like previous transaction. That will be bounced back to the normal one.
Okay.
Reverted back to the normal without any changes. When this transaction is applicable, each transaction type is associated with some of the rules determined. Okay, assistant. When user has logged in as an assistant, then the policy should be in either cancelled or expired. Auditor, when the policy status should be either cancelled or expired. Even for the manager user, the policy status should be cancelled or expired. Even for the underwriter user, if you log in, then policy status should be either cancelled or expired. No matter what, if you wanted to do any final audit transaction, your policy status should be either cancelled or expired. Only after doing the cancelled transaction itself, you can do the final audit.
Okay.
The final audit transaction is not available for the policy terms that have been cancelled flat. See, here is the note. Like, suppose if we have cancelled the policy, like with the cancelled flat, like on the same date,
Okay.
then this final audit is not applicable.
Right.
Effective date rule, like this audit generally, in addition, the effective pre-fills with a list of policy terms available for audit. User can select the desired term. Nothing but it will show the list of effective dates by defaultly in the final audit transaction. You have to select the date whichever you want.
Right.
Schedule date. The final audit transaction cannot be scheduled. Like you cannot select any date, or this field is not available for the final audit transaction.
Okay.
Reason codes. What are the reason codes? Rules for completing the final audit transaction. the final audit transaction follows all general rules for completing the transaction. In addition, upon completion of the transaction, the system sets the auto audit mode flag to the 0. Okay, nothing but when you are doing this final audit transaction, once you have done the particular transaction, the system will set automatic audit mode to the flag to the 0. Nothing but default if we keep it in as a previous data.
Okay.
Rules for auto sequence processing, like the final audit transaction can be processed out of sequence. This transaction type follows all general rules for not out of sequence process, with one exception. When committed out of sequence, the final audit transaction does not reconcile any changes to any subsequent transaction. First sequence scenario for this transaction. Okay, nothing but suppose if we have done any out of sequence transaction for the final audit, it will not do any of the changes.
Okay.
Will not reconcile with the changes to any subsequent transaction. That means what are the previous transactions you have done, those will not be reverted back and kept it.
Yeah.
So information transaction is intended but not limited to non-premium bearing changes to policies. Thus do not reread. Example, requesting a MVR or clue. Nothing but what are the this information transaction is not for the non-bearing changes. Okay, that means what are the except for the premium related field, this transaction is not applicable. The information transaction type should generally not be used to modify policies. Instead, use this transaction to reprint the lost policies.
Okay.
Order to order or attach reports, set flags or for pending actions, reviews policies and attach underwriting comments. When a modification must be made to a policy, use the endorse transaction type. Nothing but when we use this information transaction is that we do not use this transaction for modification of the policies. We just use suppose like for a majorly for the existing policies or for the lost policies or for any attachment reports or for any Jira reports are there, then we use this information transaction. Okay. What are the pending items are there or left over in between?
Oh.
Okay, we can make changes if you want only for the endorsement transaction after once information transaction is done.
Okay, yeah.
The information transaction is an editable transaction. Okay, user can edit it. When is this transaction applicable? Each transaction type is associated with the following rules. Out of the box, the transaction is applicable for the following context and policy status. If the user has logged in as an agent, then the policy status should be in force. Then only user can do the information transaction.
Yeah.
When the user has logged in as an assistant, the policy status should be as booked or bond or cancel pending, enforced or non-renewed. If the user has logged in as a manager credentials, then the policy status should be bond, cancel, booked, cancel pending, expired, enforced and non-renewed. When the user has logged in as an underwriter, then the policy status should be as a booked, bond, cancel pending, expired, enforced, or non-renewed. What is the effective date rule? The information transaction does not default to any date. Okay. It follows the general effective date rule and has no transaction specific rule. That means your user can give any type of any effective date.
Right.
Scheduled date rule. The information transaction follows general scheduled date rule. It has no transaction specific rule. That means user can give any of the scheduled date rule. User can modify it. Some of the reason code rules are rules for completing the transaction, information transaction. The information transaction follows all general rules for completing the transaction. It has no specific rule. That means no specific rule is there for this completing the information transaction. Okay. Rules for out of sequence processing. The information transaction can be processed out of sequence. The transaction type follows all general rules out of sequence processing. It has no transaction specific rules. For sequence scenarios in transaction type, so okay, there is no specific rule for this also.
Yeah.
Next, issue policy transaction. The issue policy transaction changes the status of the policy from bound or booked to enforced. Okay. When you are doing this issue policy, that policy should be either in bond or booked. Then once you issue the policy transaction, then the status will be changed to enforced.
Yeah.
The transaction type allows integration requests for printing and printing to execute the different subsequent transactions. The issue policy transaction is an editable transaction. When you can do it? Why this this is applicable? Suppose if you log in as an agent, assistant, or manager or underwriter, no matter what, the policy status should be either bond, booked, or new. The effective date rule. The effective date defaults to the effective date of the term being issued. User cannot modify this date. Nothing but what are the previous transaction you have done, or what are the previous transaction is there. That effective date will be defaulted to that.
Yeah.
User cannot edit the effective date. Schedule date rule. This issue policy transaction follows general rule. There is no specific. That means you can give what are the date you want for the schedule date rule.
Yeah.
Reason code. Rules for completing the issue policy transaction. The issue policy transaction follows all general rules. There is no, in addition, upon completion of the transaction, policy status is changed to the enforced. Nothing but when you issue the policy issue transaction, then the status will be changed to the enforced.
Okay.
Rules for out of sequence processing. It has no specific rule for this.
Okay.
New transaction. Next time. New transaction initiates the first instance of the policy in Duck system. Okay, nothing but when you are creating a new policy, then it will be in a new transaction. That is editable. When this is applicable, when user has logged in as agent or assistant or manager or underwriter or consumer user, the policy status should be quote no matter what. Effective date. There is no particular effective date rule. Schedule date is not applicable. Reason codes are also not applicable for this transaction.
Okay.
Rules for completing the new transaction. The policy status is changed to the import. From new, when you are creating a policy, newly the status will be new. But when you issue, when you have done some changes, the policy will be changed to the import.
Yeah.
The system sets the policy inception date. The system sets the transaction effective date. Nothing but what are the current date you are giving for the particular policy. The same effective date will be considered as the policy inception date and transaction effective date.
Okay. Okay.
The system sets the remove market for delete on close choose to 1. Nothing but this particular one will be defaultly set to true.
Okay.
Rules for out of sequence processing. The new transaction cannot be processed out of sequences. Okay, that means this is not applicable. Next is non-renew transaction. Next transaction is like non-renew transaction. The non-renew transaction changes the status of the policy to non-renewed. Like what are the previous status is there, no matter what, when you do this non-renewed transaction, the policy status will be changed to the non-renewed. This transaction type is usually started at any time during the policy period, then is scheduled to completion of the appropriate non-renewal notice time. This transaction is invalid if the policy has any open or scheduled non-renew transaction. This non-renew transaction is non-editable transaction. User cannot edit it. When is this transaction applicable? Suppose if the user had logged in as assistant or manager or underwriter, the policy status should be either cancel pending, expired, or in force. Next, FHU date rule. The FHU date defaults to the expiration date of the current term. Okay. What are the previous FHU date is there now? That will be defaulted to the expiration date.
Okay.
You cannot modify this. This FHU date cannot be modified by the user.
Okay.
Schedule date rule. There is no specific schedule date rule. Read and quote. Rules for completing the non-renew transaction. Non-renew transactions, the policy will be changed to the non-renewed status. Rules for out-of-sequence processing. Non-renew transaction cannot be processed out of sequence. That is not applicable. A registered transaction is the next one. The registered transaction reverses the cancellation. Okay. Suppose user had done the cancellation transaction and issued it. Now, if the user want to revert back the changes, whatever he has cancelled, no, then he can use the reinstate transaction. Whatever the before cancellation transaction, whatever is there, that will be coming back, reverted back.
Yeah.
Additionally, when enabled a reinstate transaction, the lapse allows the cancellation to be reversed after a specific period of time has passed. This article contains processing information for the reinstate transaction as it is by default when configured to allow for the lapse. What are those? Return the status of the policy to original policy status before the cancel or cancel pending transaction. Nothing but return to a policy to the original policy status once user has clicked the reinstate after the cancellation transaction.
Yeah.
Transaction is invalid if the policy has any open or scheduled reinstate transaction. Suppose user has done any, for example, user has committed the policy and then done the endorse and next cancel and reinstate, that is pending. Okay. That that user hasn't issued it. I mean, like committed it, and later on he has done some of the transaction. Now user wants to do again the reinstate. In that case, it will not work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Processing of this transaction with multiple transaction in sequence with the same term is allowed. Lapse period cannot overlap when there is a more than one reinstated transaction. Okay.
Yeah.
Lapse period will not be there when user has done multiple reinstated transactions. No other transaction can be written during the lapse coverage time. You can configure the alert time allowed to pass before the reinstate occurs. Multiple cancel transactions and reinstate transaction with lapse can be written in the same term in sequence. Nothing but user can do multiple transaction and reinstate transaction, but with the same term and in sequence lapse. Lapse should be same.
Okay.
Nothing but effective date and expiration date. When the transaction can be done. Suppose when the policy status, when the user has logged in as agent or assistant or manager, no matter what, that should be the policy status should be either. Sorry, what?
No, did not say anything.
Hello, Mega.
Yeah, did not say anything.
Mega, can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Oh, okay. Suppose if the user has logged in as an agent, then the policy status should be cancelled. The cancel reason was insured request. the transaction was cancelled by an agent. Okay, the cancel region should be mandatorily for the insured request.
Yeah.
Next, if the user has logged in as an assistant, the policy status should be cancelled. The transaction was cancelled by an agent or assistant. Applicable.
Yeah.
When user has logged in as a manager, the policy status should be cancelled, and it should be cancelled by agent, assistant, underwriter, or manager. Then only this transaction, this transaction will be applicable.
Yeah.
Underwriter. When user has logged in as an underwriter, the policy status should be cancelled, and it should be cancelled by an agent, assistant, or underwriter, and the policy is anything other than cancelled. Okay, the policy status can be anything other than cancelled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Effective date rule. The effective date defaults to the cancellation date of the policy. Okay. No one you will be doing the cancel transaction, right? So before the default effective date will be for the reinstated cancellation effective date. User cannot modify this date, but reinstate with lapse, the user can modify this once configured.
Yeah.
The effective date must fall within the term. A lapse period cannot cross a term. Nothing but the lapse period should be either between the effective date and the expiration date. There is no scheduled date rule. Okay, user can give whatever he wants.
Yeah.
A reason code rule. Suppose if the user has logged in as an assistant, payment received and will be there. Auditor is not applicable. When manager, payment received will be there. Underwriter, the payment received will be there. Rules for completion for the registered transaction. Rules for the out-of-sequence processing. The progressing of this transaction with multiple transaction out of sequence with the same term is allowed. Okay. Previously, depreciation transactions are reapplied and re-rated for the reinstate date. Nothing but what are the changes you have done or previously before cancel transaction, that will be re-rated.
Yeah.
That means it will be transferred back to the original.
Yes.
Premium will be changed. When reinstating an out-of-sequence cancellation, the transaction offset the cancel transaction or automatically reinstated. Nothing but the cancel transaction will be reverted back, and what are the previous transaction is there, the details will be same as it is. Each term must be reinstated separately. Okay. When reinstate transaction is reinstating an out-of-sequence cancellation, the process term, the system does not automatically apply the reinstate transaction to the second term. For example, you are doing the another time reinstate transaction. Then, if you have done any out of sequence, like out of the box of out of expiration date and effective date, then in that case, the changes will not be done.
Sorry?
When a reinstate, then what are the revert back changes will not be done because it is a sequence. The policy date should be in between the term date itself.
Yeah.
That's the rule. When a reinstate transaction with the lapse reinstating and out of sequence cancellation, the system will either push all the transactions that occurred during the lapse to the reinstate effective date and reapply the transaction, and it not reapply the transaction. Suppose if you are doing the reinstate with lapse, okay, the policy term date should be in between itself. If it is out of the box, then it will not revert back the changes.
Yeah.
Any pending or committed transaction with the last period are moved to reinstate date and out of the last period. Okay. What suppose if you have done any pending or any transactions you have done before reinstate, those will be moved under after the reinstate. Order will be changed. Reissue transaction. Reissue transaction reverses the cancellation, beginning a new policy term. The effective date same as the cancellation date that expires in the same number of a month of a previous term. This transaction is valid only if the policy is currently cancelled, and then last transaction term is only term that has been cancelled but not reinstated. Okay, the reissue is only applicable when user has done the cancellation transaction but not reinstated.
Okay.
Uh, Reissuing a policy has been cancelled out after sequential does not reinstate any of the transactions. Suppose if you have done now after cancel, if you have done reissue, you cannot do reinstate after that.
Okay.
When is it applicable? When the policy, no matter what, if you have logged in as an assistant manager or underwriter, the policy status should be it cancelled.
Yeah.
The effective date rule. The effective date defaults to the cancellation date of the policy. Okay. User cannot modify it. What are the the previous transaction will be like cancellation. So what are the effective date of the cancellation is there? The same will be defaulted to the reissue as well. You cannot modify it.
Okay.
Schedule data rule. Okay, it has no specific rule. You can give what are the date you want. Rule for completion the reissue transaction. The policy will be changed to the info, the policy status. Rules for out of the sequence processing. The reissuing a cancelled policy out of sequence does not reinstate any other transaction that were offset by the cancellation. The user must manually reapply the transaction. So once user has done the cancellation transaction, once user has done the reissuing policy, then user cannot do any of the transactions later on that.